Welcome to Legacy Truths. Thank you for coming back for this second episode here. The first one we're having technical difficulties, and I'm trying. We're doing it well here, just starting off, and the more videos we put out, the better we'll get at this. And we're trying to get you this information as the best as I can. So we're gonna keep on talking about the flow of money, what we talked about last time. Excuse me. With I meant to say actually North Korea in the last video, but it was pretty degraded, so I highly doubt anybody watched it. But so I just wanted to do a couple of comparisons of where we are in current times, obviously, to what I just touched on last time with these last three countries. And there's a really, really good website that another YouTube channel, the Patriot Hour, turned me on to. And it's through lookingglass.news, .wordpress.com. I'll go ahead and I'll put it in the description box below so you guys can check out that link. And it breaks down a lot of the Q Anon posts that has been going on. I'll go ahead and post that as well. And if you're unfamiliar about who Q Anon is, what this even means, I'll give links over to another channel, the Patriot Hour, for descriptions on a breakdown of what that is. But today, definitely, we're going to be getting into this one. And it's interesting. I think this would be probably the most apt picture I could find for future what we were talking about in the past and where we are at right now. You can see it's quite interesting. All of us on the below here, and you can see the hierarchy of pyramids of privilege, all the way up religion and the monarchies, kings and queens, and those who rule them and behind. So we can kind of see what's going on there. But we really wanted to know when all the monies come together and it's under one world bank, it doesn't necessarily have to be a dollar that looks like mine exactly, it looks like yours, no matter what country on this place of the earth that you stand at. And this other little picture here from the WordPress.com website really illustrates kind of in today's term where the corporations lie, where you and I lie, where the rest of us lie, where this fiat money currency, where it funnels up to. This right here definitely gives you a pretty good indication of what it is. I mean, you have, this is really but apropos right here, with all of us, the people, planet, all the living things. Let me back this up here a little bit so you can see a little better. You have the different various governments of the world, our government, other countries' governments, and then those governments are usually ran by high-powered lobbyists. And we're talking these are the GE, their standard, their mantra should be "We make war." Pfizer, they're buying out a lot of other stuff as well. These are all then from there you have the larger umbrella corporations that house all these sub-corporations. Then you kind of have the national central banks. You have the U.S. Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, excuse me, and you have this other one here. I can't read this very much, so let me get it real close. Maybe that's the Bank of Australia. I could be wrong. It's this picture is not quite coming up how I want it to come up on the on the computer here. But you can see above them is that international central banks, IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and then of course the World Bank was what I was touching on the last video. But of course, even above them, you have the central bank of the central bank, and that's the Banque Internationale for Settlements. This is the bank that tells quote unquote, all the generals, if you will, who are collecting all the other little small banks and keeping them in line. These are the people who tell you what the going gold standard rate is for that day. These are going to tell that and if this country's world or this central bank has another issue with this other central bank. These are the people who actually run the people who run the people who run the people. It gets pretty deep, and but you can see at the top where it's aligning to, where it's going to. Where do you feel you fall on this pyramid of domination and control versus wealth and resource? And this really kind of reminds me of, in back in your school class, they teach about, the feudalism, and you had the vassals, and you had the people, the dukedoms, and the people who ran the all the lands and everything was involved with them. And I thought this was another one, of course. And all these graphics I'm pulling up with you on this today is all from the WordPress. And I'll have it linked up in the description box below. But it's quite interesting where you can see where we're sitting here, kind of the correlation. This is very clear unless you are in the top 1.5% of the wage earners, and I would even guess to say now it's like the top 1% of the 1%. This is, of course, taken from the data of U.S. Census and Bureau of Labor Statistics. And you have everyone else in the bottom when we come to the medieval feudalism side, which is as far left here. You have the peasants, the laborers, the conscripts. I would even add indentured servants. Then, of course, just above them would be, of course, listed on this medieval feudalism side, the vassals. These are the tenant farmers, military officers. These are the peoples who actually they weren't quite skilled traders, but they were definitely skilled workers. They could do something. Of course, above them was the merchants, traders, explorers, East India Trading, East India Company. There you go. It comes off with there. And so they had their breakdown of who really ran the things. Of course, the monarchs, kings, queens, emperors were the ones who actually were in charge of the duke. These are all the dukes and the earls and the barons. We can associate that, of course, nowadays to those are the people that surrounded the king and gave him, I guess you could say, advice during times, or they were celebrations. Most of the times we'd see these images of movies and kings sitting on the throne and the jesters jumping around. You can hear people laughing, and there's food, and it's very, very, voluptuous sounds and smells and tastes and feasting. It's usually a sign of decadence to the max. So these would be the dukes and the earls, all with the kings, and you may have a couple of the clergies below, the archbishops or one of the higher priests involved, and so if we can basically take that down to what it is to today, going back to the graphic, as you can look at, this is us down here. Nice little graphic. We're the everyone else. We're the workers, the students, the soldiers. These are the ones who are. I mean, we're not even vassals anymore. At one point in time, the vassals used to be above everybody else, but now that's kind of dropped down a notch. And so, if you get into corporate feudalism, this is where, if you look at the corporation, who's actually running the actual assets, the property, the actual tangible physical things that you can actually measure and define and weigh. So for us starting off right now, this is all of us, the workers, students, soldiers. These are people who are not quite would be skilled workers, but we're enough. We're like laborers, if you will. Then, of course, you're the top professionals, doctors, entertainers, clergy. I would argue that clergy would probably be still in everyone else, but of course they are professionals in their career, and we can give them that. The top bureaucrats is commissioners, secretaries, elected officials. And you kind of see where this one falls in the way of the corporate side. These elected officials, they see us as just a corporation, which we became a corporation quite a while ago. And above them, you have the corporate elite. We know that's another little dirty term right there. That's been coined. The Fortune 500 multinational conglomerates we talked about before. Even on them, you have the people who actually fund these big giant banks. And this is J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Lloyd and Kumlode, and all these different guys. Um, these are guys actually funding these Fortune 500s. But of course, who's funding them? Who's giving them all their funding power? And of course, that's the central bankers, the Federal Reserve, Bank of Japan, the ECB, and it's quite interesting when you're looking up, what it was back then versus what it is now, and it really doesn't really look too much different than this right here. But the same thing. You can get to one point P, but you can never get past there. So it hasn't changed. It really hasn't changed. There's somebody up top who's doing what they needed to be doing, and they've put people who are not really in power, but just give a social power, if you will. And because we recognize that, this definitely can be broken down. So I really encourage you guys to take a look at this, and even seeing what this style hasn't changed, and we need a republic. Those of us, every human, every person, especially this evolves at where we're looking at. I mean, we're in America, and so I believe that, and this is what also the founding fathers believed, that our rights were granted us by God, and the Constitution was just a piece of paper that stated that, and that every person is a king, and every woman is a king that walks in America. And that's the difference. There is no feudal system here, but there is a corporate feudal system. And this is crazy. And when you see it for what it is, you can realize that, be careful. And there's truth out there, and we see it. And there's a lot more to come, obviously. There's nothing that no one person can do. So links will be in the below in the description to the other where I got this that we talked about today. And again, if it's year one, the very top of your pyramid should be God, the Almighty Creator of all things, and as what His Son did is the reason why that we can come to Him. And just remember that you have that, and there is faith among us believers and us patriotic individuals. And I thank you, and I appreciate it, and God bless.